Margaret Chase Smith. Margaret Madeline Chase Smith, born on December 14, 1897, died on May 29, 1995, was an American politician. A member of the Republican Party, she served as A.U.S. Representative 1940 to 1949 and A.U.S. Senator 1949 to 1973 from Maine. She was the first woman to serve in both houses of the United States Congress and the first woman to represent Maine in either. A Republican, she was among the first to criticize the tactics of Joseph McCarthy in her 1950 speech, Declaration of Conscience. Smith was a candidate for the Republican presidential nomination in the 1964 election. She was the first woman to be placed in nomination for the presidency at a major party's convention. Upon leaving office, she was the longest-serving female senator in history, a distinction that was not surpassed until January 4, 2011, when Senator Barbara Mikulski from Maryland exceeded her record. Smith was ranked as the longest-serving Republican woman in the Senate, a distinction that was not surpassed until January 3, 2021, when Susan Collins, who holds the same Senate seat she previously held, was sworn in for a fifth term. On June 1, 1950, Smith delivered a 15-minute speech on the Senate floor, known as the Declaration of Conscience, in which she refused to name McCarthy directly but denounced the reckless abandon in which unproved charges have been hurled from this side of the aisle. She said McCarthyism had debased the Senate to the level of a form of hate and character assassination. She defended every American's right to criticize, right to hold unpopular beliefs, right to protest, the right of independent thought. While acknowledging her desire for Republicans' political success, she said, "I don't want to see the Republican Party ride to political victory on the four horsemen of calumny, fear, ignorance, bigotry, and smear." 6 other moderate Republican senators signed on to her declaration: Wayne Morse from Oregon, George Aiken from Vermont, Edward Thye from Minnesota, Irving Ives from New York, Charles Tobey from New Hampshire, and Robert C. Hendrickson from New Jersey. Her speech ended with a warning: "It is high time that we all stop being tools and victims of totalitarian techniques that, if continued here unchecked, will surely end what we have come to cherish as the American way of life." In response to her speech, McCarthy referred to Smith and the 6 other senators as Snow White and the Six Dwarfs. He removed her as a member of the Permanent Subcommittee on Investigations, giving her seat to Senator Richard Nixon from California. He also helped finance an unsuccessful primary challenger during Smith's re-election campaign in 1954. Smith later observed, "If I am to be remembered in history, it will not be because of legislative accomplishments, but for an act I took as a legislator in the U.S. Senate when on June 1, 1950, I spoke in condemnation of McCarthyism when the junior senator from Wisconsin had the Senate paralyzed with fear that he would purge any senator who disagreed with him." She voted for McCarthy's censure in 1954. On July 17, 1950, Smith was commissioned as a lieutenant colonel in the Air Force Reserve, and she served until 1958. In the 1952 election, Smith was widely mentioned as a vice presidential candidate under General Dwight D. Eisenhower. When asked by a reporter what she would do if she woke up one morning and found herself in the White House, she replied, "I'd go straight to Mrs. Truman and apologize. Then I'd go home." On December 3, 1957, Smith became the first woman in Congress to break the sound barrier, which she did as a passenger in an F-100 Super Sabre piloted by Air Force Major Clyde Good. Exhibiting the same independent nature in the Senate as she had in the House, Smith opposed President Eisenhower's nomination of Louis Strauss as Secretary of Commerce in 1959. On January 27, 1964, Smith announced her candidacy for President of the United States. She declared, "I have few illusions and no money, but I'm staying for the finish. When people keep telling you can't do a thing, you kind of like to try." Gladys Shelley wrote her a presidential nomination campaign song, "Leave It to the Girls," which was sung by Hildegard. Smith lost every single primary election, but did manage to win 25% of the vote in Illinois. At the 1964 Republican National Convention in San Francisco, she became the first woman to have her name be placed in nomination for the presidency at a major political party's convention. She placed 5th in the initial balloting and denied unanimous consent for Senator Barry Goldwater from Arizona after refusing to withdraw her name from the final ballot. She nevertheless campaigned for Goldwater in the general election, appearing in a television ad in which she defended his position on Social Security. Following her departure from the Senate in January 1973, Smith taught at several colleges and universities as a visiting professor for the Woodrow Wilson National Fellowship Foundation, 1973 to 1976. She resumed her residence in Skowhegan, where she oversaw the construction of a library to hold her papers. At age 97, Smith died in her native Skowhegan in 1995, after suffering a stroke 8 days earlier that had left her in a coma. She was cremated, and her ashes were placed in the residential wing of the Margaret Chase Smith Library in Skowhegan. She was the last living U.S. senator who had been born in the 19th century. Thanks for watching Her Story channel. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe our channel.